What is heat and what is temperature?
Temperature is the measurement.
Measurement of
Transfer of heat due to the temperature difference.
temperature is a measurement of transfer of heat.
There is a flow. There is a transfer of energy between two bodies which have a temperature difference. So that
temperature we generally take at an equilibrium state, isn't it?
Okay.
So how do you say that it's a transfer of energy? So first of all, heat is basically heat is, can you have a heat property at an equilibrium state?
Sir, basically temperature is like potential of degree of hotness. Like it's like in electrical terms, if we compare.
Can you repeat it again? Electrically,
temperature is like potential, like degree of hotness. How means how hot and like.
You are trying to combine two things. Generally, what we say is it is the degree of hotness or coldness. That is one definition. In electrical sense, if you want to have analogy, that means some likeness with electrical terms, you are saying that this is the potential difference that is creating the heat transfer. That is what you want to put in, right?
Yes, sir.
Just like in a voltage potential creates the electric current, that's in the similar lines. When it comes to two different states, the heat transfer between the two systems is always propelled or driven by the temperature gradient. So temperature potential difference. That is what you want to say. But what I am asking is, heat is not a property. Heat is in when the body is in transition, heat transfer takes place. But when a body is in equilibrium state, heat will not be present. We will not say that as heat energy. When there is transferring, we say that it's heat transfer is taking place. Similarly, work also we say that when the body is in non-thermal non-equilibrium, so then we will say that the body is doing some work. So that is when it is converting from one state to another, these things will these energies will transfer. Okay, so once it comes to equilibrium, the total energy that is possessed in terms of the average translation kinetic energy, if you are trying to measure it, we call it as temperature. Okay, so what does it essentially means? So suppose if you say that the temperature of an object is higher, what does that mean? It means the kinetic energy of the particles and object of the gas or a liquid or a solid is higher. That is the meaning of it. The lower temperature, we feel that the kinetic energy of the particles is lower. Okay, so you also have this example like CP, the specific heat at constant pressure and specific heat at constant volume. Which one is greater? On what basis will you explain? If you have to explain it to some layman, how do you say? Okay, just have a look at it. You'll try to get that. Okay. So next one is, so as I told you, temperature and pressure control, they are involved in many physical phenomena, both academia as well as in industry. And its ranges will be from 0 Kelvin to 1 lakh Kelvin. Okay, so that is a wide range of temperature that we have, and no single instrument will be able to measure this much range. So we have different strategies or methods or working principles to measure a particular range in between these in this whole range of temperature. So for small ranges, we have different instruments which we will use for measuring the temperatures. So in this particular class or in this particular module, what we try to do is we will try to understand different measurement instruments which we will use in the sub ranges of 0 to 1 lakh Kelvin temperature measurement. Okay, and you may get the basic problem here is, unlike the mass, we cannot do a direct measurement here. In direct measurement, what we do, we have a standard, okay, which is physical, and we try to bring the unknown unknown mass to it, and then we will put it in a balance, and by direct reference we will try to find out the difference in that. But unfortunately, temperature, we don't have any standard to directly measure it. So what we do is we are doing an indirect measurement. Okay, so you may ask, sir, what is the standards for this? How do we find the standards for it? So the basic international practical temperature scale, that is ITS 90. So what they do is to compare different things or to create a standard calibration points, okay, to measure. What they will do is they found out some reproducible states of matter. For example, water at room temperature and what is its boiling point, okay, and what is its freezing point, what is its triple point. So at a particular temperature, at a particular pressure, what are its boiling or freezing points or temperature points? So they have standardized them as the calibration points, such that whenever you have a measurement system, you will try to reproduce the state and put that probe or sensor or whatever the measuring instrument you will put into that and try to measure the temperature. And what difference, how much difference do you have, how much deviation you have, you will find out, and from that you will form a calibration curve, and from that you try to negate the errors that will come in the measurement system. Are you able to understand what I am trying to say? For example, in a mass or in a physical length and mass, what we have is we have direct measurements. We can do direct measurements by having standard matter directly which are visible to our eye, and there is a direct measurement. But when it comes to the temperature, we don't have such scales which are physical, which we can see with our eye. So what we do is we know that water at room temperature, at a standard temperature and pressure, we know those conditions, right? What is the triple point of water? What is the triple point of, what is the freezing point of water at this temperature? What is the boiling point of water at this temperature? So basically pressure and temperature are we generally relate. So they are influenced by each other. So at a particular pressure, what is the freezing point? We know for a fluid. Similar line at this pressure, what is its freezing point and what is its boiling point? We know. So that standard, the same thing, if we can keep the pressure constant, we can reproduce the states around. So suppose if I am taking that at room temperature, at room pressure, standard pressure, what we are trying to do is, that is 1 atmospheric pressure. If we are taking water and if we keep on heating at 100 degrees centigrade, it becomes into vapor. For example, at 100 degrees centigrade, we are going on, we kept the pressure to be 1 atmosphere and we try to keep on heating it. And whatever the measurement instrument we want to measure, once it becomes vapor, we will try to bring that and put it into the system. And if it is measuring 99.9, that means 0.1 degrees variation we have. Just giving an example. Okay, likewise. So if it is showing 99, then maybe plus or minus 1 degree variation is what we can see. So that is the standard method they will follow. So what they do is, practical temperature scale internationally, they will always have these calibration points. They will always specify the calibration points. At this pressure, this is the temperature for a fluid to boil. At this pressure, this is the temperature for a fluid to melt completely. So these are the values. So these states can be reproduced, and whichever unknown measurement instrument we have, we try to bring and reproduce the state and try to measure how much deviation we are getting. That will form our deviation or error with that instrument. From that, we will find out the uncertainty. So as I told you, there are very many, how do we measure the various ranges, sub-ranges of temperature? So we will follow different principles like pressure, volume, electrical resistance, and expansion coefficients. All these parameters, they keep on changing with respect to temperature. When temperature changes, pressure changes. When temperature changes, volume changes. When temperature changes, it has an effect on electrical resistance. Similarly, expansion coefficients. All these are related to temperature. They are directly proportional or inversely proportional. So based on their proportionality, what we try to do is, we try to use these parameters like change in pressure, change in volume, change in electrical resistance, and change in expansion coefficient for the measurement of temperature. So this forms the basis of the classification of different measurement systems. All right, so we will try to find out What are the different temperature scales that we have? You all know that we use generally Celsius, degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit scales. So these are based on specification of number of increments, on how many number of increments that we have. Based on that, we are actually defining them. So we have 100 degrees in Celsius scale and 180 in Fahrenheit scale between the freezing point and boiling point of water at standard atmospheric pressure. Suppose at this pressure, the freezing and point and boiling point will vary from 0 to 100 degrees in Celsius, 0 to 180 in Fahrenheit scale. Are you understand? Water at standard atmospheric pressure, its freezing point is 0 Fahrenheit scale and 180 is the boiling point. Similarly, for water at standard atmospheric pressure, 0 degrees centigrade is the freezing point and 100 degrees centigrade is the boiling point. So we have a relation which actually relates these two. If you want to convert degrees centigrade into Fahrenheit scale, we have this equation which you might have already learned in your schooling, or when you're at least in your plus, you might have got this F minus 32 by 180 equal to C by 100. So based on this, you'll be able to find out the conversion of Fahrenheit scale to degree centigrade or degree centigrade to Fahrenheit. Another scale we generally use, the absolute Celsius scale, what we call it as Kelvin scale, okay, and that of Fahrenheit we call it as the Rankine cycle. Okay, the absolute Celsius scale we generally take it as to be Kelvin scale. Okay, so these are the various scales that we have. You can see over here Celsius scale, that means it's like a gauge pressure kind of a thing. Now degree Celsius, you can see it is from 0 degrees centigrade. So we are taking this as reference, ice point as reference, but still we also have negative temperatures. Okay, when you want to take that in terms of an absolute scale, that means from a 0 scale. So you look at this, this is the Kelvin is the absolute scale. So therefore absolute 0 is in 0 Kelvin and 373 Kelvin is at 100 degrees centigrade. So there is always 273 variation is there. So your 0 degrees will be related to 273 Kelvin. Okay, so for a Celsius scale, the absolute scale is Kelvin scale. So you can relate these two. Similarly, for a Fahrenheit scale, you can see that when it is 0 degrees centigrade, for Celsius it is 0 degrees, but at 0 degrees Celsius it is quite equivalent to 32 degrees of Fahrenheit. When you are 0 degrees C, it is equivalent to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, similarly minus 273 degrees centigrade is equivalent to minus 460 and your 100 degrees is equivalent to 212 degrees. But when it comes to your absolute scale for Fahrenheit, you have 0 degrees Rankine cycle here, Rankines. So this starts with 0 degrees. Okay, so in general we use Celsius and Fahrenheit. If you want to use the absolute scale, we will use Kelvin or Rankine cycle for the corresponding Celsius and Fahrenheit respectively. Now we will come to understand what is the common temperature sensing techniques. In what way we are actually classifying the different instruments, or in what way we are actually planning the design of certain temperature measurement instruments. So we have many physical parameters which are being influenced by the temperature, as we have seen in the previous slide. We have pressure is getting influenced, volume is getting influenced, electrical properties like electrical resistance is getting influenced, thermal radiation is another principle based on which we have planned to devise the principles of temperature measurements, and then chemical phase, changes in chemical phase also we have, which are used to actually measure temperature. Okay, let's get into each one of them. We have, based on the change in physical dimensions, that means we can say that the displacement, based on the displacement of, because of the temperature increase, we are converting the temperature variation in terms of displacement or mechanical means. We call that as changes in physical dimensions, which we call it as liquid in class thermometers as well as bimetallic elements. There is a rise or decrease in the level of the liquid because of the temperature rise, which we call it as liquid in glass thermometers. Similarly, we have bimetallic elements the name itself will tell you that bi means two metallic elements. So two different properties, metallic elements are stick together, are formed as a composite. And when the temperature is changing, each one is having a different expansion. Because of that, its regular geometry will have a change. Okay, when it is a flat, it turns into curved shape. So based on that, we are able to find out what is the temperature difference. So that the ways and means by which we are doing that comes under the mechanical means of measurement of temperature. Okay, that is how we define this first one. So in this we will study both liquid and glass thermometers as well as bimetallic elements. The second one is basically depends on changes in gas pressure or vapor pressure. Okay, so when your temperature is varying, both your gas pressure or vapor pressure, it also gets affected. When its volume, you are trying to keep it, when your volume is changing, obviously your pressure will and vapor pressure will keep on changing. So under that classification, we have constant volume gas thermometer. So here your volume is kept constant. So when pressure, volume and temperature are there and volume is kept constant, your pressure and temperature are inversely proportional. So what is that law which relates these two? Pressure and temperature keeping volume as constant?
Sir, Gay-Lussac's law.
Gay-Lussac's law. Pressure and temperature with volume is constant. What are the fundamental laws in chemistry? Whatever you know.
Charles law, sir.
That's Charles law. Right. So now the second one is pressure thermometer. Okay, where we are having gas, vapor, and liquid filled. Here we use the pressure variation caused or pressure gauge variation we will be finding out, and that we are trying to relate with temperatures. So because of the temperature, there is a change in the pressure, and that is being monitored by the pressure measurement device. And whatever the change in the pressure, because of the changes in the temperature, we will try to relate these two, and that is basically your pressure thermometer. You can see that it's a thermometer, so we are trying to measure the temperature by using pressure. So we are calling it as pressure thermometer. The top one is constant volume gas thermometer. So we are using gas here. It's a temperature measuring device, but here we are keeping the volume of the gas to be constant. We are not varying the volume of the gas. So when we are keeping the walls and when the temperature is varying, it is having it's having an effect on the pressure. So how they are related is basically given by the Charles law. So based on that principle, we'll find out this. The next classification will be changes in electrical properties. We have resistance, which is a strong function of temperature. Depending on temperature, your resistance will keep on changing, right? So there is a positive relation as well as there is an inverse relation. So when your temperature increases, your resistance will increase. When your resistance will decrease, your temperature opposite may also happen. So based on that, we have different instruments. In that the first one is resistance thermometers. Using resistance thermometers or RIDs or PRTs, we call it as. So because of the temperature change, there is a change in the resistance, and that we will find out by Wheatstone-Bridge circuit. What is the change in the resistance? From that, I will try to evaluate the temperature. So that is basically a resistance thermometer. Using resistance change principle, we are measuring the temperature. Second one is thermistors. It is again depends on the coefficient, expansion coefficient, and so thermistors is also an important thing that we use to measure temperature, and it is indirectly related to the temperature. Its resistance change is indirectly proportional to that. The third one is thermocouples. You know the voltage change, Seebeck effect, we call it as. So thermocouples we will use. You know the principles when two dissimilar metals are joined at two different junctions, and if they are maintained at two different temperatures, obviously EMF is produced in the circuit, and depending on the amount of voltage that it is circulated, one end we will keep constant at 0 degrees centigrade, the other end unknown temperature. Depending on the variation in the voltage, we will try to find out what is the temperature. So we have a relation between these two. So the basic thing that we use is thermocouples. So these are generally we use to surface measurement of any surfaces, we want to directly measure the temperature, generally we go for thermocouples, right? So whereas liquid in glass thermometers for household measurements, for basic and things we will use for liquid temperatures, with a very small range, we will use the liquid in glass thermometers. And then we also have semiconductor junction sensors. So we also use semiconductor sensors to measure the temperatures also. So that these are all the different classification of measurement systems based on the electrical properties. Depending on how the temperature is related to the electrical properties, we have devised these kind of instruments, right? So in that we will go very deeply into thermistors and thermocouples. Very important. Resistance we will touch upon. Semiconductor we will not dwell too much on this. The fourth one is all this so far whatever we found out are very low temperatures. That means we will not be harmed when we are near these temperatures. But there are temperatures like furnace temperatures where if we go very close to those temperatures, we will be affected. We will be prone to damage of our skin and all. So that kind of huge temperatures we cannot measure with the regular measurement systems like this. So we need other principles like thermal radiation principles we will use, which will the thermal radiation principle you will be deeply studying in your heat transfer subjects. So we will use those principles to measure the temperatures over here. Okay, so we have thermal and photon sensors which are based on radiation principle. So that we will have, and then total radiation pyrometers. So this is one important thing that we deeply study in this particular module. Pyrometers are very important, and then optical and two-color pyrometers. Those are also we will have it. This also comes under pyrometers only, optical pyrometers, and then infrared pyrometers. These are the three pyrometers we will have actually study in this module, which comes under the thermal radiation. So when the temperature is varying, the radiation it emits from the surface also varies. The frequency of this radiations that are emitted of a body will vary. So depending on what ranges it will fall, we will classify those instruments, and based on that we will try to find out the temperature. So this is non-contact. So we are not in directly contact with the temperature with the surface which is emitting these radiations. We are far away from here, and based on the optical methods or image methods, we will be trying to find out this kind of temperature. So that is basically your thermal radiation based measurement systems of temperature. The fifth one is changes in chemical phase. We are not specifically looking at it. It's a very interesting thing. So because based on the temperature, the chemical phases will vary. So using the chemical phases, we will use this particular temperatures. One of them is liquid crystals, which is very, very interesting one, which is what I worked in my PhD. So I want to spend some time on liquid crystal thermography, but this may not be there for the syllabus for the exams and all. This is out of my interest. I am teaching this. Fusible indicators beyond certain temperatures, these indicators will melt, giving an indication to us. Similarly, temperature reference fixed point cells. So these are all different techniques that we used based on the chemical variations. We will use that for temperature measurements. So out of them, we will see the important ones in this module. So we will try to spend more time on the most important things that you come across in your daily life or in your industry when you go to industry and all. So we'll spend more time on that. Let us start with the ideal gas thermometer. So it's a very simple instrument, as we have seen in the previous classification. Here, the basis of working here is the behavior of ideal gas at low pressure. So here at low pressure, what we take is we assume that the gas is behaving like an ideal gas, and we know what is an ideal gas equation, which is pressure into the volume occupied by the gas is equivalent to the mass into the gas constant, which is defined as the universal gas constant divided by its molecular weight into the absolute scale of temperature. Okay, so this is the ideal gas equation, which you are well aware of it. So we are assuming that at very low pressures, we are not going very high pressures. So there is a relation between the temperature and pressure. So for low pressure at room temperature and so, we will use this ideal gas thermometers. So here we are showing the instrument that we use for finding out the temperature. So it's a constant volume ideal gas thermometer. You can see that the image that I'm showing here is the ideal gas thermometer, constant volume. So here the volume will not change. Ideal gas, since we are using the ideal gas equation, we are calling it as an ideal gas thermometer, temperature measurement. So initially what we do is, we know the volume, fixed volume of gas I will take, and we also know the pressure by this volume of gas by having this at a by using a pressure gauge. Okay, so we generally take this and we will try to find out, putting it in the equation, gas equation, pressure you are getting from the pressure gauge, volume you know how much you are filling, into the mass of the gas, Rg you can find out from the universal gases by molecular weight, what gas you are using. From this you will find out this. So all the things are known, so you will find out the temperature at that particular thing, temperature of this particular gas, because of which is related to the pressure. Now if you are taking this and putting it into an unknown temperature, into an unknown environment where the temperature is not known, now you need to find out what is this T. So that is what we are expected to find out. Since the volume of the gas is kept constant, suppose if you are taking it into a temperature where it is higher than the reference temperature, before temperature, so obviously from high temperature surroundings heat will flow into the system. Since volume remains constant, the pressure will automatically increase because of the increase in temperature of the gas. So therefore the pressure and temperatures are directly proportional when volume is kept constant. Therefore your pressure, when its temperature is increasing, your pressure increases by particular constant, so your pressure will change. Now already we find out with respect to T. Now the next expression is, the pressure is changed P2, volume remains constant V, mass of the gas remains constant, it will not change. Rg, same gas we are taking, so it will not change. By T, the T new. So if you take these two equations, one after the other, mass and mass will remain constant, Rg will remain constant, volume will remain constant. So we are left with the equation T equivalent to T reference into P by P reference, or at constant volume. So we are keeping the volume to be constant. So reference represents the initial conditions at which we have measured the pressure at a room temperature or something, and T is the unknown temperature and it is based on the pressure rise that is happening. Okay, so that is depending on this particular thing. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to find out by this particular law using the basic thing. This is the working of ideal gas thermometer. Okay, so after finding out different points at different references, we will try to form a curve, and from that we will try to find out the intermediate ranges of temperatures also. So we have wide ranges of temperatures. So how do you find out with the same gas? So we will use different gases depending on our requirement. We can use different gases to measure different pressure, different temperature ranges. For example, if you use hydrogen, you can measure from -200 degrees centigrade to 500 degrees centigrade. That is the range of the instrument with good accuracy that we can measure by this ideal gas thermometer. When you use nitrogen, you can go from 500 to 1500 degrees. When you use helium, it will be -270 degrees centigrade to 1500 degrees centigrade. So when you look at helium, it is giving a good amount of range for the measurement. So these thermometers are generally very accurate. So what is the accuracy? It will be generally within plus or minus 0.005 degrees centigrade. That means almost 3 digits variation we are getting from 0 to 100 degrees centigrade. So when you are measuring with variation of 100 degrees centigrade, your plus or minus 0.005 degrees centigrade is the variation. But if you are going to 100 to 500 degrees centigrade, the variation will be 1 degree centigrade. And when you are going to 1500 degrees centigrade, its variation will lie within plus or minus 2 degrees centigrade. So the higher range, the higher the deviation that will come into the measurement system. So this is basically about the ideal gas thermometer. I have given a small problem I will try to explain the problem. Let's try to solve this problem in your in your free time. So it's a very simple thing as we have discussed. So I'm not solving it. The thing is like there is a copper bulb. We are taking this as a copper bulb of constant volume gas thermometer. Has a radius of 0.05 meters. So this is having 0.05 meters radius. So you take it as a copper bulb. When the bulb is filled to 1 atmospheric pressure, so initially the pressure is given. P reference is 1 atmospheric pressure. They are almost equivalent to 0.021 moles of gas in the bulb. So they have given the mole of gas, how much moles of the gas is given. So they are asking us to find out the slope. Estimate the ideal gas constant. R value they are finding out with the calculate the percentage error with the standard value of R 8.31. So they are asking you what is the error with the standard value of R. So with this, what is we are getting as ideal constant and how much it is varying with 8.314 joules per mole Kelvin. So you have to use the ideal gas equation and solve this particular equation. It's as simple as that. The next one, the next important measurement system that we use is basically a well-known instrument to you all. Here, the temperature measurement is by means of mechanical effects. That means you are having some displacement or change in the structure of the instrument. So by varying the geometrical change happening in the instrument because of the temperature, you are trying to evaluate the temperature. So this instrument we call it as this classification of these instruments we call it as temperature measurement by mechanical effects. So mechanical dimensions are changing. That means geometrical dimensions are directly varied because of the temperature. And we are trying to measure those changes in the dimensions, and then we relate that to temperature. So the first one is liquid in glass thermometers comes under this. Liquid in metal thermometer also comes under this category. And finally, bimetallic strips, which are very interesting. You might have seen these bimetallic strips. So these are also comes under this category. The first one is liquid in glass thermometer. You know this kind of an instrument at your home we will be using whenever we get fever. We will use this instrument to measure the temperature of the body. So here, the construction is simple as this. There is a small bulb like this. Okay, small bulb. Inside this, we have another column where you are filling that with mercury. You can see this, the capillary size of this particular bulb, and there is an expansion chamber over here, small expansion chamber, and this is a bore that we have. And on the outer glass, we have this graduations of scale. So we have mentioned the various readings on the scale, and then we also have a liquid column filled with inside the bulb, inside the capillary bulb. Okay, inside the capillary bulb. So we have a bulb here. This is the bulb. So either mercury or alcohol are generally used. So what above this, what we will use is generally we use mainly argon or nitrogen or evacuate the system about the thermometer. Whatever around this, we will change that by a inert gas, by means of an inert gas like argon or nitrogen. So whenever you're looking at it, you have one small expansion chamber over here. What is this expansion chamber? From the mechanical measurements, mechanical design, what might be the expansion chamber? So it says an expansion is slightly higher than the capillary diameter of the that particular stem, right? So why it has given like that? What is the requirement? What if I give suddenly a sudden close here? Why I have to provide a circular kind of this?
So that the gases which can cause the back pressure can be entrapped in there.
Back pressure. Any more answers? So generally, as a experimentalist, you always have to remember that you don't know what is the input parameter that you are giving. Sometimes by mistake you may give some high load or overload, right? So when you give an overload, if you are not giving any provision to take that overload, that instrument may be damaged very easily. So in order to reduce that effect due to overload, we are providing here. If you are going beyond 140 or 150 Fahrenheit, this may blast, because if the pressure created in this may increase, and it may not be able, the capillary tube inside may not able to sustain that, so it may block. That's why we are giving a kind of a circular thing here, such that it will be protected from the higher loads. Okay, so that is the use of this. So I don't think I need to spend so much of time in this. So you know what will happen. There is this bulb, which actually this particular bulb tube is what we keep it inside the temperature where we want to keep it inside the fluid or on the surface. We will keep this. From this gas bulb outside, the heat will penetrate and touch this liquid. Since the expansion of the liquid is more than this particular glass tube, the liquid metal inside will expand, taking the temperature. And by looking at the expansion of this relative to the temperature, we have an equation. So based on that, we will be able to find out the temperature. So this is what we are trying to find out using the liquid in glass thermometer. So what are the key features that we can find out in a liquid glass thermometers, which include so that extent to which these thermometers are inserted into the medium, under which measurement principle decides the accuracy, up to where you are actually immersing the thermometer. For example, are you immersing up to here? Are you immersing up to here within the liquid, or are you keeping up to here? So based on that, your measurement will vary. So this is one of the important parameters, the extent to which you are actually inserting your thermometer into the medium under temperature measurement. Okay. Second, how do we classify that? We can classify that immersion to be 3 types based on how do you immerse that in the fluid medium. So one is the total, partial, and complete immersion according to the level of contact between the medium and the sensing element. So whether the sensing element is just in touch, or partially in touch, or completely immersed in the fluid, based on that we are classifying these three different classifications. So we can do whatever, but the essential part here is when you are doing calibration, okay, when you are trying to do calibration with this thermometer, up to where you immerse the sensor, whether it is partial or total or complete. So whatever the mode of contact that you are giving, we are just touching it, or you are almost keeping half of it, or completely putting the complete sensor into the liquid. Whatever method you employ for the calibration, for the actual measurement also, you have to use the same method. Okay, otherwise you'll get errors. That is one of the fundamental thing that you need to remember. Second thing is, an emergent stem correction is required. As I told you, when your measurement, suppose if you are taking your body temperature, generally you will try to put the whole stem into your under your tongue, or when you put in your armpit, you are trying to completely keep that sensor under your armpit so that it will take the body temperature. So you are completely covered in it. Suppose there are points like where the flat surface temperature you have to take. So there you are only actually touching it. You are not able to completely cover it up or completely immerse that into the surface. So in such systems, an emergent stem correction. So some stem correction, so error that is coming because it is not completely or partially immersed, it is only just touched. So there should be some correction which should be used to measure the temperature accurately. So you have to find out what is the error that is coming because of the improper contact of the thermometer with the surface or the fluid. So that is why in general, whenever you look at the thermometers, you look at in labs or you look at in anywhere, it's generally used for complete, the bulb will be completely immersed. It will not be, for example, if you are measuring the surface temperature, you don't generally use a thermometer. Even if you use, the temperature you are getting will have some error. So if you are not very accurate, if you don't want any accurate results, then you can go for it. But in general, what we do, we will try to find out the liquid temperature using a thermometer, body temperature using a thermometer, liquid and glass thermometer, but not the surface temperature of anything which we cannot completely immerse. So generally, we don't do that. For finding out the surface temperature, we will use sensors like the thermocouples and all. Okay, we don't use these kind of systems. Clear? Another. Yeah.
Yes. So what is the difference between like total immersion and complete immersion, sir?
Generally, if you have to completely fill this, whatever the bulb is there, no, this has to be completely immersed. Okay, this has to be completely inside the liquid to get accurate. Sometimes we will just keep this up to this part, or sometimes we keep up to this part. Sometimes we keep this part. So generally, the accurate way is we will keep up to this bulb temperature is up to this. We will keep it inside the liquid to get accurate temperatures. There are some systems where we cannot keep complete up to this because the volume is only up to here. So we may come up to here only. So there may be a slight error that will come into the picture. If it is a flat surface, we will only touch this. We cannot even keep this. For that, we need to find out what is the error because of this stem. Because of this stem, what is the error? Because heat is only going through this direction. It is not going in all these directions. Okay, so only one direction you are getting the heat. So this is designed for taking the heat in all directions, and based on that, your temperature has to go in, right? So because of that, we will have some error. So in order to overcome the error, what I am trying is, suppose if you are doing a calibration with the half thing, so you cannot use the system and put it into another measurement, unknown measurement. You have taken a calibration first by keeping it only partially. And then you are trying to use this calibration curve to some other where you are filling this up to here, you are bound to get some errors. Or your calibration is up to here, you are completely immersing it, but in actual experiment or measurement, you are only fixing it up to here, and you are trying to use the calibration curve for this measurement, you are again failed to get accurate results. So if you are following up to partial filling in the calibration, use the same for accurate measurement, for actual measurement. There is error, but it is consistent. That is what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's fine. But like I'm talking about like what is difference between total immersing and complete immersing? Like they feels like it is like fully immersing it, and partially is like partially immersing it. But I'm not getting the difference between the total immersion and complete immersion, sir.
Total and complete. Total and complete are same only, no?
Okay, so that was I'm asking, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So here, okay, partial, complete, and okay. I will have a look at it. I might have made a mistake. Total and complete are same. Okay, it cannot be different. Partial and complete is okay, but total, yeah, you are right. I'll see this one. Okay, I'll update this. Good question. The other things which are key features include the response time of a liquid and glass thermometers varies according to the kind of thermometer, its bulb volume, thickness, and overall weight. What do you mean by response time? You already studied this. What do you mean by response time?
To achieve a steady state.
To
reach steady state, sir.
To reach steady state. Okay, what is the definition that I told you? The first and second.
So the time at which we start the measurement and the time at which the values actually show up.
No, that is sensitivity, no?
No, sir, there is some time lag between whenever we measure and
what is the time lag? A time lag for 60% of input or 63.5% of input or 90% of input. Which one?
90%, sir.
So the instrument, the time taken by the instrument to reproduce 90% of input is what we call as response time. It's like a steady state only, whatever he has said, but in terms of numbers, if you have to say, it is almost 90% for a step input. Okay, so on what factors it depends It depends, the response time of this depends on bulb volume, what is the size of the bulb volume, what is the thickness of it, and what is the overall weight. Okay, again, sir, why this all will come into picture? What is a bulb and all will come into picture? Because these are all geometrical phenomena will all be creating the static sensitivity and all that. Okay, based on this, we'll be finding out that. So from that, your tau is responding on all of this. So you can say that the response time is a function of the bulb volume. The bulb volume here. What is the volume that you are keeping in this bulb volume? What is the thickness of the bulb volume? Bulb, and then its overall weight. Okay, so how can we say that for getting quick response, if you want to get very quick response, so the bulb of the thermometer, we should design that in such a way that it is small and the bulb wall is thin. Okay, it should be very small and the wall should be, thickness wall of the wall should be very thin. Again, sensitivity is based, what is sensitivity, what is the smallest for a small increment, it should be what is the smallest increment for which the output, the instrument gives an output. So the sensitivity is, yeah.
So response time should also depend on the immersion, right? Like fully or partial immersion.
But mostly it may be a weak function, otherwise it will be mentioned, right? So it is fully or partially. For that you have to have a particular study about this, how it affects and all. But generally we will talk when it comes to design factors and all. We are only looking at you are defining a instrument, right? You are trying to design an instrument. What will you look at? What is the size of the bulb? What is the thickness of the bulb? These are the things that you look, right? You don't look at whether when it is fully kept and what it is partially. Once after designing it, you will try to measure those effects when you are keeping it. What is the error? When you are partially keeping it is. So when you are designing it, you are only design the weight and then the geometrical phenomena, geometrical dimensions, right? So in that sense, the response time with its geometrical dimensions, how they are related, what are these very important functions of it is given here. As you rightly pointed out, it depends on that. But once after the design, it comes into picture. Okay, the strong geometrical functions are the bulb volume, thickness, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The overall weight means it is the weight of the liquid used in it or the complete device, sir?
Both. Its overall weight means the complete thing.
Okay.
So even if your volume, the bulb volume, if you are decreasing, automatically the amount of fluid that you are keeping is also decreasing, right?
Yes,
So for a small bulb volume, you cannot put more mercury, right? So it's all included. That's why they call it as overall weight. All right. So the next thing is sensitivity is also based on thermal expansion characteristics of liquid in comparison to the glass. Okay, how good this liquid inside is expanding in comparison to the glass. The more the thermal expansion of the liquid, the higher sensitivity the thermometer is. So there is a comparison that you always have when the temperature goes on increasing, liquid will increase as well as the thermal glass tube surrounding it also tends to have a slightest increase, which we will not be able to see with your naked eye. Okay, ideally we don't want the glass to increase, because if the glass also increases, what happens? The markings will vary and we are also getting to have a wrong reading, correct? So the ideal case is it should not have an expansion. The liquid should not have, the glass should not be having within that temperature range, it should have negligible expansion, whereas the liquid should have good expansion, such that for the lesser temperature degrees, I mean 0.1 or 0.05 degrees, it can, if it shows some displacement, the better the sensitivity. Again, the problem is when the sensitivity increases, your range decreases or the size of the instrument will go on increasing. Are you getting me? Have you understood what I am trying to say? So this will expand, no? The gas first the temperature is sensed by the glass surrounding it. Suppose if it expands, because it is having a linear coefficient of a linear expansion, if it is compared to the liquid, almost both are equal. Suppose if you take, So this will expand, and after that only the temperature will go on, and then this will expand. When it expands, the graduations also expand. So the liquid will expand by slightly, so there is an error. So the ideal case is it should not expand, but the inside liquid should expand. And how sensitive this expansion is, that means per degree centigrade, how much it increases. Based on that, the sensitivity will increase. For example, for 0.05 degrees centigrade, it is expanding, right? So it is expanding by 1 mm. So for example, so if you want to get more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, for example, the size, if it is very, very sensitive, the length of this pipe will increase because it is changing by smallest variation in the temperature. 0.05 also, it has to accommodate in terms of graduations. So the size of this will go on increasing. But if your sensitivity is low, only 1 degree centigrade, 2 degrees centigrade, then you can have a smaller one because you are worried about only 1 degree variation, not within this. So therefore, the thermometers that we use at home will give you only what temperatures? 1 degree variation maximum. It doesn't, you cannot measure 0.5 and all. So that's why it is compact in size. So the sensitivity, when it comes to sensitivity, when you are looking in terms of designing, these are all the intricate things that you have to have a look at. I hope I am clear. So in a nutshell, the more the thermal expansion of the liquid, the highly sensitive the thermometer will be. Clear? Any questions up to this? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now organic liquids, generally what we employ for construction of liquid emulsion, they are also, we only don't go to mercury all alone. We also use organic liquids depending on our application. We also use organic liquids like toluene, ethyl alcohol, and pentane. These are generally used organic liquids as manometric fluid inside. And then there is a but what is the issue with this is, even though the thermal expansion is high, so they expand for a very low temperature. But what is the problem is they are non-linear. See, when you are doing an instrumentation, you generally want to have a linear expansion relationship. You don't want to have a non-linear relationship, especially if you are graduating or giving a markings on the scale. Okay, so for instruments simple as like this, you cannot give a math. If it is a digital meter or some electronic devices are required, you generally want to have exponential and all. You just give a function, it will calculate and give the digital reading. So that for that anything is fine. But for a manual reading kind of a things, these readings are given based on linear scale or linear measurement. So when you use these kind of organic liquids, their expansion is in general not in linear in nature. They will be having a variation like this. For example, with temperature, this is temperature, and this is expansion, let us say. So we always want to have it to be linear like this. So for every temperature, the slope should be same, so that you can give uniform gradings on the scale. If it is varying like this, but after this temperature, it is suddenly increasing like this, how do you give equal readings? So this actually is what is negating the use of these organic liquids for this temperature measurement by mechanical effects. So this kind of measurement systems may not use this kind of organic liquids. Generally, we use for household and all, we use the general thermometers. Coming to the second thing, so time is up, so it's almost 11. So what do we do is, in the next class, we will have a look at by mechanical effects. We will continue temperature measurement by mechanical effects. We will see bimetallic strips in the next class. And then thermoelectric effects, we will try to finish in the Monday's class. So coming to the mid-examination, up to wherever we finish, I think we can finish, if 3 classes are available, then we can finish the temperature measurement. So mostly we will have for mid-exam up to temperature measurement. Clear? So any questions? If you have any questions, you can stay back. Others, if you don't have any other question, you can leave. Have you taken the attendance? What is the class time? 60. Let's go. So, any other questions? I'll be happy to answer. And another important thing, please don't write the record for this week. Whatever retardation test you have seen yesterday. I think we both have discussed with Ambapasad sir. There is a mistake in the measurement actually. So I don't know how they have taken, because I went late to the lab while taking the reading. It has to be from when we cut off the fuel. The reading has to be taken from 1500 to 1400, then 1400 to 1300, and then from 1300 to 1200, from 1200 to 1100. That's how they have to take. But what they have taken is in a phone, they have just taken this. So Professor Ambapasad sir has told me to just wait, not to write the record for this week. He wants you to see that clearly in the next week. So probably in the next week, the same experiment we will redo that experiment, and I will show you the correct way of taking the experimental readings. So this week don't write any record, you enjoy this week. All right. Sahil immediately is mentioned. Okay, sir. Okay, Sahil. Any other things to discuss? You please can discuss with me. So one question some student has asked me, 1 or 2 doubts in the minor exam. Today I will answer those things. I'll sit with that 1 or 2 questions somebody has posed to me. We'll try to answer that. Apart from that, if you have any other thing, you are free to ask me. Otherwise, I will try to end the session. I hope today's class is clear. So no questions in this class. As I told you, I'm repeatedly telling you, so please look at it from the design point of view. Just don't remember only the principles. Jayesh, tell me, Jayesh. Jayesh, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Nothing like I was just telling you, it was clear.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So please look into different textbooks. If you look at Beckwith and one textbook, Holman, just go through it. You'll get a lot of information about this. Okay, in a single class, completing all the aspects is a little difficult. So I'm constructing myself only to the working principles and some salient points, but it will be interesting if you look at from the design point of view. Imagine that you are given an assignment like find the temperature measure of a surface without having this effect with immersion effects and all. How do you measure it? Suppose a very small instrument you have to build. How do you think? Okay, so what are the existing things? What are the principles involved in it that you will know? And then what is your necessities you will write down? What is the deficits that's coming from the conventional instruments that we are using? What new you have to incorporate? So that's how in steps you will try to devise, right? So when you look at the subject in that sense, it will make very, very interesting. It will make you learn many things. You can go through the different aspects of the authors and from different books. Just go through the book whenever you get time. That's my suggestion. It's a very interesting subject. Just spend some time on it. If you read it like a fundamental principles, I'm very sure that it's the most boring subject. By heart something, write down, and you'll get marks. That is not what it is intended for. Probably I may not be teaching that great, but that's fine. But whatever I am trying, I'm doing it. But your thought process should be in that sense. You are a designer, and your people are asking you to design temperature things. So how do you go about it? From that perspective, try to read the subject. All right, if you have nothing to share with me, I'll take a leave from you. Please take care of yourself. Thanks for attending the class. I think Kalyan might have taken attendance.
Sir, in minor one question, you said you will change that answer.
Yeah, I see that question. I'll explain in the next class. Okay. So you are asking about the same question, no? When it reaches the peak and then becomes steady and all.
Yes, sir.
That is the question, no? Be there. I will try to.
I think, sir, that option is correct only, sir.
Correct. That's what.
But
see, because.
But you can recheck.
The question is given like this. Option I have given. I mean, may not be doing. I will just be on the line. I will try to find out here. Yeah, what was the, are you able to see this? I'm presenting it.
No, sir, it's not visible.
Yeah, yes. Now it is visible, right?
Yes,
So you're
sir.
asking this question, right? The step response of an underdamped second order system.
Yes, sir, that question.
Yes, sir.
So what was your doubt? The first option is increases, okay, reaches a peak and becomes constant in oscillatory manner. So it increases like this, and there itself it oscillates over there, and then it becomes constant. That is what it means. Second option is increases, reaches a peak and then decreases, and then it oscillates. So first goes to a higher value, comes down, and then it oscillates to become steady in an oscillatory manner. Third one is reaches a peak and exponentially decreases. There is a steep decrease. That is what he is mentioning, and decreases to become a constant equal to the magnitude. So increases and then decreases, and then it becomes a static. C. Fourth one is increases, reaches a peak exponentially and becomes constant equal to the magnitude of step in input. So in all the options, which one is correct now? Should I show you the? Huh?
B only, sir.
B is
No,
correct.
then what is the problem? That is what is given. Huh?
Someone was telling that C is correct.
No. It reaches a peak initially, and then it decreases, and then it becomes, it oscillates to become constant. Right? So just look at the whatever the PPTs that I send you. Just look at in 4.1. It is there. Okay, by name, the PPT by name 4.1. I can look at. So answer is B.
There was one more question, sir.
Which question? This one? Time constant of a.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This one.
No, not this one. I think. Frequency and all. So what is the answer for this?
Sir,
What-
I was getting around 3 milliseconds.
3 milliseconds.
Yes, sir.
If others, have you checked anyone this question?
Actually, angular frequency should be given, sir. Just giving frequency is incorrect. It
No,
adds in.
sir, we can find angular frequency, right? 2 pi nu.
Yes, sir. We have to find angular frequency. In that sense, the answer is coming.
That's why I will answer this question. Let me check this and I'll come back to you. Okay, there is an equation. I don't remember that equation. You have
Sir, I
you
also
have put that. Yeah, I will check and come to you. So if I say something now and it becomes wrong, it will not be looking good. So let me check this and come back to you. All right? Yeah, only this question is pending. Other things are right? Okay. Then. Okay. Then I will try to wind up the session. Bye. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.